Oh, so this video is fun for me. I'm going to show you several poetry books that I can recommend and which had an influence on my writing in some way, which maybe will help you find something if you are interested in trying something new. So I'm going to first go over 5 books of poetry that are contemporary, and I'm going to call them normal. And then I'm going to go over 3 really weird books of poetry in different forms. So let's get started. First up, we have Fire and Flower by Laura Kashish. I learned a lot from this book when I was in undergrad, specifically about language and like concrete words and just making sure that we are constantly being specific and making things personal. And we're actually going to go over one of her poems this year called Confections. So I'll let you hear more about that one later, and I will link to it on this page as well if you want to see more about Laura Kashish. I also have The Wild Iris by Louise Gluck. And this one was really beneficial to me as a writer because she merges the natural world and the religious world. So she talks about gardening through this whole book, except all of the titles of the poems relate to the Catholic Mass. So all of them are called things like matins or vespers, and sometimes they're named after months or flowers that she gardens. So it's about this kind of like merging between the natural world and religion, and how gardening kind of became her religion and gave her all the benefits that religion is supposed to give someone. So I found this really useful because during my own work in grad school, I was kind of finding this space between space and me deciding not to become a physicist, and kind of some of the stuff I was digging into with myth. So this kind of merging of the natural and the occult world was really interesting for me and helped me a lot. All right. Do you like sad poetry? Like, do you like really romantic stuff that just makes you want to cry? Because this book will make you want to cry. This is The Painted Bed by Donald Hall, and he is one of our former poet laureates, and he was also married to a woman named Jane Kenyon. She is a poet as well in her own right, and she died of cancer, and then Donald wrote this book, and it is one of the most heartbreaking things I have ever read. And yeah, I recommend it if you're going through a breakup and you just want to feel all your feelings. Like this book goes from everything to, like, it starts with this poem about shortly after his wife's death, Donald is walking his dog and the dog keeps looking for his wife. And if that doesn't get you right at the beginning, then it goes into like years later when he tries desperately to date again, and the entire time he's having sex with a woman, all he can think about is how guilty he is. And it's just so sad on so many levels. And if you like that, then this is the one. Okay, so this next one is by Marcelo Hernandez Castillo, and he is actually someone I've worked with previously. I would consider him a friend, and this is his collection of work, Sensantle, and some stuff about Marcelo that's relevant here is that he is a Mexican-American immigrant, and he is for a long time has been undocumented, and he writes a lot about that experience of being an undocumented person as well as a bisexual man and living in this culture of extreme masculinity and trying to be who he is, as well as like being an American that is also an immigrant, and just kind of these dual natures of personality. And it's a really great book. He does some interesting forms in here that he gave me a lesson on that I will show you later in the semester. So I think they're very interesting. He also uses white space in very interesting ways. Hopefully the camera picks this up maybe a little bit, kind of. So there are some really beautiful poems in here, and this one is pretty recent. He's also had a novel come out in the last year, so his name may be familiar to you. And then when I mentioned in the last video that I went on this Nigerian poet kick, this was the book that did it. It's called Eel on Reef, and it's by Uche Nduka. And I don't have any idea what to say about this book. It's one of the longer ones. It's actually it's 160 pages, and I was given this one as an assignment in the independent study I talked about, where I just wanted to read people that I wouldn't possibly have read before, that weren't in my curriculums growing up. And Eel on Reef is an entire poetry book that does not delineate where its poems start or end. It's a very complex book of poetry. And then, like, at first I was frustrated by this book, and it challenged me a lot. And if you're looking for a challenge, this might be it. It's got incredibly strange language and like strange sentence forms. Sometimes there are not sentences at all for pages. You won't see punctuation, and then it comes back in and it's clear again. And I would say I was maybe about 70 pages in before I read a line that suddenly made so much sense and made me understand the rest of the book that I felt like had made no sense to me. And it was such a cool experience to kind of go through that, to think I was going crazy for 70 pages and then have one thing make it all click, that I recommend this book to people a lot, because I have no idea what they're going to get out of it, but I'm interested. So yeah, this one is really cool. All right, so the last three I'm going to show you are weird books. And I wanted to show you these to show you that contemporary poetry does not have to be what you were taught in high school. We have, as a community of poets, generally grown away from form, right? So like sonnets were very popular in the beginning, and we're going to start with those classical forms too. But we have moved into much more lyric style poetry, where the poem itself is the song. It doesn't need internal meter, and where everything is a lot more free verse as opposed to a narrative story. And it's a little bit more abstract. And those things are all great, and that's what you'll see in the previous 5 books I've shown. But that's not the end of what poetry can do. And so I wanted to show you the different ways that theme or media or form can change poetry. So this book is called Severance. It's by Robert Olen Butler. And each of the poems is a prose poem that is a single page long. So that's one poem. We're going to look at prose poems a little later this semester. And each of these poems is actually a monologue of poetry from the perspective of a person who was beheaded. So thus the title and the imagery on the front cover. And so it goes through different people. It talks a little bit about their history first. So like, for instance, Maximilien Robespierre, lawyer and revolutionary, guillotined by the Revolutionary Convention 1794. And then an excerpt that is theoretically supposed to be a monologue from that person's perspective and what he might have been going through or thinking. So I thought this one was really cool as far as kind of having a thematic link to all the poetry. And there's another one that's called Intercourse, which is also really cool. So that's Robert Olen Butler. He does kind of these very odd, prosy themed collections. Then we have this collection called All This Can Be Yours by Isabella Hare. And in addition to just shockingly good art, this one is interesting. So every single poem in this book is actually a blackout poem. And we will also look at blackout poems this semester, but essentially it's when you take something that is decidedly unpoetic and black out the page until you can find a poem in the words you have available. And it's a really cool exercise. And if you have not seen them before, you can even just like Google blackout poetry and sit on the image page forever. So what she has done is collected all of the apology letters of people accused of sexual assault and black them out to say what they're actually saying. I'm gonna try to find one real quick that I can actually read to you guys. Okay, I found one that doesn't have any vulgar language in it. This one is interesting. So as you can see, it's pretty short. So this space theoretically would have been the length of the apology letter, and it says who it's written by over here. And then the blackout poetry, the what's remained here is essentially what Isabella O'Hare is reading between the lines that this person is actually saying in their non-apology letter. And what she's left on the page is, I have to step away from the fun, but I'm comfortable and safe. Which we can assume is to say that the victims are not comfortable and safe. So this is a really interesting collection of poetry. It's very timely, and I thought that one would be a cool one to show off. The last one I'm going to look at is called Astroecology. It's got a very sparse cover. It's by a Swedish poet, Johannes Helden. And I found this one incredibly nice. So this is poetry in the form of a map. So as you can kind of see on here, there are numbered sections of the map, and each of those correspond to a different poem. And the poems are actually, they can be anything from images with footnotes and captions. And at first glance, it seems a little bit more like an index. So for instance, on this first page, it says number 1, which means you look at the map, find out where number 1 is, and that'll help you imagine the place this is happening. Then there's an image of trees and fog. It says the rain came quickly. Afterwards, moths swarmed the algae-covered lamp above the terrace. And what do we do with that? There's a footnote on it. And then it talks about the animated movie Princess Mononoke, where plants grow in the footprints of the nature spirit. One breath later, they wither and dissolve. The sound of water drops striking leaves is entropy. The sound of rain is transformed into a distant roaring. And the pale blue dot is a photograph of planet Earth, taken by Voyager spacecraft from a record distance of about 6 billion kilometers from Earth. And on its own, that doesn't feel like poetry, right? We have an image, we have maybe a pretty sentence, and we have some footnotes, and all of that together is a little bit odd. But the collection kind of comes together to challenge what we think of as poetry and what poetry can be and include. And even like one of these footnotes in here includes a link to a YouTube video so you can have sound to accompany the poem. Anyway, I think that's really cool. And I wanted to highlight these so that you have an idea of some things to maybe start with. And if not, I have a lot of really cool recommendations. Just let me know kind of what you're interested in reading or what you like, and we'll find something for you. Hope this has helped, and I'll see you in the next video.